I'd like to begin by condemning the heinous attack on innocent Syrians with banned chemical weapons. It was an atrocious attack. It was horrible. You don't see things like that, as bad as the news is around the world. You just don't see those images. We are studying that situation extremely closely. We are meeting with our military and everybody else, and we'll be making some major decisions over the next 24 to 48 hours. We are very concerned when a thing like that can happen. This is about humanity. We're talking about humanity, and it can't be allowed to happen. So we'll be looking at that barbaric act and studying what's going on. We're trying to get people in there. As you know, it's been surrounded, so it's very hard to get people in, because not only has it been hit, it's been surrounded. And if they're innocent, why aren't they allowing people to go in and prove? Because as you know, they're claiming they didn't make the attack. So if it's Russia, if it's Syria, if it's Iran, if it's all of them together, we'll figure it out, and we'll know the answers quite soon.
Is why are chemical weapons still being used at all when Russia was the framework guarantor of removing all the chemical weapons? And so working with our allies and partners from NATO to Qatar and elsewhere, we're going to address this issue.
Can you rule out taking action, launching airstrikes against Assad, Mr. Secretary?
I don't rule out anything right now.
Images of children suffering after an alleged chemical attack on the rebel-held town of Douma near Syria's capital Damascus have sparked renewed international outrage. Witnesses said patients gave off a chlorine-like smell, and some had bluish skin, which can be a sign of oxygen deprivation. In a tweet Sunday, Trump called the attack sick and mindless and promised a big price to pay. White House Homeland Security Advisor Thomas Bossert told ABC's This Week show that the president is discussing options with his senior national security cabinet.
This isn't just the United States. This is one of those issues on which every nation, all peoples have all agreed and have agreed since World War II is an unacceptable practice.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan accused the West of supporting the Syrian government.
Hey West, when will you turn around and look at these children, these women who are being killed in eastern Ghouta, so we can say you're acting justly?
The alleged chlorine attack on Saturday came days after Trump said he wanted to pull out U.S. troops from Syria against the advice of his military leaders. Bossert said the United States has contributed more than its share to the world's security.
It is time to move that pendulum back in a way that brings regional partners and others with equities in these matters all around the globe into putting their resources and their treasure and their boys and girls on the line, and not just American troops. American troops aren't going to fix the 6 or 7 different ongoing conflicts and wars going on in the Middle East or in Syria at this stage.
The U.S. State Department has called on Russia to stop supporting the Syrian president and to work with the international community to prevent further barbaric chemical weapons attacks. Russia and Syria denied that a chemical attack took place. Assad's forces were accused of a similar attack against rebels in Idlib almost exactly a year ago.
Followed Saturday's suspected chemical weapons attack. Syrian soldiers seen here. A spokesperson for Israel has declined to comment, but Russia says the planes carried it out from Lebanese airspace. It's unclear exactly how many missiles were launched at the military base. Moscow says Israel fired 8 and that 5 were intercepted by Syrian defenses. Syria's state-run media said that there were several killed and wounded, but pointed the finger at the United States as the attacker. Washington's denied it, as has NATO ally France, without offering their own explanations. The airstrike happened hours after President Trump had warned of a, quote, big price to pay for the Syrian government after reports of another alleged chemical attack by Syria's military surfaced over the weekend. Reuters couldn't verify the reports, but aid organizations said dozens died in the rebel enclave of Ghouta, men, women, and children. It's the last major territory held by the rebels, who are backed by the West, and they're under siege. Syria's government has denied any involvement, Russia said any retaliation would be based on fabricated excuses. Israel's attacked Syria's military many times over the course of this conflict, and it comes a year after an American cruise missile strike hit another Syrian base in retaliation for the sarin gas attack it blamed on Damascus.
As the president noted yesterday and again today during the cabinet meeting, the chemical weapons attack by Syrian regime against innocent civilians is horrifying. The images, especially of suffering children, have shocked the conscience of the entire civilized world. Sadly, these actions are consistent with Assad's established pattern of chemical weapons use. His forces are already responsible for previous chemical weapons attacks and other actions targeting civilians. The president has noted that Russia and Iran also bear responsibility for these acts, since they would not be possible without their material support. It is also now clear that Russia has betrayed its obligations to guarantee the end of the Syrian regime's chemical weapons program. The president and his national security team are consulting closely with allies and partners to determine the appropriate response. As President Trump clearly stated, there will be a price to pay. We call on all members of the international community to share any information related to this attack and to hold the perpetrators and their sponsors accountable. And we call upon the Syrian regime and Russia to open the area to international medical assistance and international monitoring. And with that, I'll take your questions. John.
The president was pretty definitive today in saying that this was an attack with banned chemical weapons. Yet there hasn't been any concrete proof of that. Russia insists that there is no evidence of chemical weapons. What makes the president so sure that he is willing to make such a declarative statement?
The president is confident. He's been briefed by his national security team and being kept up to date constantly and regularly on the intelligence around that. I can't get any further beyond that at this point.
Do we have any proof at this point that it was in fact a chemical weapon?
Once again, I can't get anything beyond the comments that we've already made, but we're very confident in those comments.
It was just a couple of weeks ago the president was talking about wanting to leave Syria very quickly. Now you're saying that there's a price that has to be paid. Does the president believe that there are some things that are so atrocious, which is the phrase he used this morning, that the United States is in fact the world's policeman, and it demands a response, it demands the presence of the United States government in the region?
Look, the president wants to bring our troops home after we complete the mission to eradicate ISIS in Syria. At the same time, he wants to make sure Assad is deterred from chemical weapons attacks on innocent civilians. Signaling we want to remove our troops in no way degrades our ability to hold parties responsible. Mike.
Has the president been briefed that his comments about wanting to leave Syria could have played a part and have emboldened Assad and played a part in these attacks?
The only individuals that played a part don't reside in this country, and I think we've made very clear who we think is responsible for these attacks, and to try to conflate that and make this on any part and blame on this president is absolutely ridiculous.
He has criticized others for signaling military plans. It seems to be what he was doing here. Does he regret those comments that he made last week?
The president's been clear that he wants to make sure that we have the defeat of ISIS. We've also been clear in our actions, as you have seen after previous chemical attacks, what this president has done, and I think we've been very upfront on that.
Sarah, first, the news out here this morning about apparent strikes carried out overnight. Does the United States believe that Israel was behind those strikes, as the number of reports claimed? Does the United States give a heads up by the Israeli government?
I can only speak on behalf of this government. For questions on that, I would refer you outside. I can tell you at this time the United States is not conducting airstrikes in Syria, but I can't go beyond that at this point in time.
So from the White House perspective, did the White House get a heads up from any foreign government about conducting strikes in Syria?
Again, I can't go any further than commenting on behalf of our government, and I can tell you that currently at this time the United States is not conducting airstrikes in Syria.
Back on the deterrence for a moment, you said the president wants to ensure that the Assad regime can't conduct attacks like this in the future. Last year when the president launched those cruise missiles, he had said that there was a deterrent. Obviously, what has changed between sort of months ago when the Assad regime wasn't using chemical weapons and this strike now? It seemed to be the timing coming so soon after the president making that determination on wanting to pull U.S. troops out of Syria, that there was you can see why we're drawing the timing there. So why, in the president's estimation, did his deterrence, his attempt to sort of establish a deterrent effect on the Assad regime now failing?
Once again, the president has made clear that with the defeat of ISIS, he wanted to be able to bring our troops home. But at the same time, he wants to make sure that Assad is deterred from chemical weapons attacks on innocent civilians. We think you can have separation. John?
Yeah. But sir, didn't the president, by saying that he wants to get out of Syria, essentially give a green light to Assad to do this, as John McCain has suggested, that the United States was leaving, was kind of pulling up and leaving it to...
Look, we're still there, and I think that it is outrageous to say that the President of the United States greenlit something as atrocious as the actions that have taken place over the last several days. The President once again made very clear how he feels about those types of actions when this took place roughly a year ago, and